My first day as a cemetery security guard started with a strange feeling in my stomach. Something felt different, though I couldn't put my finger on it. When I arrived at the gate, everything seemed calm and peaceful. I entered the small office and began reviewing the security monitors. Everything seemed normal until suddenly something caught my eye on the screen. A shadow passed quickly behind a tombstone. My heart started to beat faster. This couldn't be real, right? It must have just been my imagination. As the night progressed, the sounds began to get stranger and stranger. Noises of dry leaves, breaking branches, and even the sound of something being dragged. I tried to convince myself that it was just the animals in the surrounding forest, but a part of me knew that wasn't the case. Something or someone was out there in the cemetery. I decided to do a round to check if everything was in order. As I walked among the tombstones, I felt a chill run down my spine. It was as if he was being watched. I looked around nervously, but didn't see anything. I kept walking, trying to ignore that uncomfortable feeling. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed through the trees, causing me to startle and almost trip. I ran back to the office, closed the door, and turned on all the monitors. My eyes scanned each image, looking for any sign of movement. It was then that I saw something truly disturbing. A dark figure slowly approached one of the cameras, as if watching me. My blood ran cold, and I felt a fear I had never experienced before. I decided to leave the office and confront that sinister presence. I grabbed my flashlight and headed out, determined to find out what was going on. As I approached the spot where the figure had been sighted, a chill ran through my body. The silence was deafening, and I could feel my heartbeat quicken with each step. Then, suddenly, something appeared in front of me, making me step back in fright. It wasn't a shadowy figure, but rather, something much worse. I cannot describe the horror that gripped me at that moment. Before me, a creature stared at me with empty eyes and a mouth twisted in a demonic smile. His body was disfigured, with thin, twisted limbs, and his skin appeared to be falling apart. I froze, unable to move or scream. That thing slowly advanced towards me, and I could feel its foul breath on my face. I don't know how long I was paralyzed, staring at that abomination. It seemed like an eternity. Finally, I managed to move and ran back to the office, locking the door behind me. My heart was beating so hard I thought it would explode. I looked nervously at the monitors, but the creature was gone. I took a deep breath, trying to calm down, but the image of that horrible being had burned itself into my mind. I spent the rest of the night awake, alternating between checking the cameras and listening carefully for any noise. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen. What was that thing? Where had she come from? And worse, where was she now? As the day began to lighten, I felt relief, but also a deep fear of what might happen the next night. When my shift finally ended, I left the cemetery as quickly as I could. I didn't want to stay a minute longer in that damned place. I drove to my house with the feeling that something was following me. As soon as I arrived, I locked all the doors and windows, trying to convince myself that I was safe. But the image of that horrible creature wouldn't leave me alone. Couldn't sleep that night. With every noise, my heart raced. I was afraid to close my eyes and see that disfigured face again. I knew I couldn't go back to work, but I also didn't have the courage to quit my job. What if the creature found me at home? Or worse, if she was following me? I couldn't stop imagining terrifying scenarios. Finally, the day dawned, and I felt a little more relieved. Still, I couldn't get rid of that constant fear. I decided I couldn't stay at home all day, so I went out to do some shopping. I tried to distract myself, but the image of that horrible being wouldn't leave my head. Every moment I looked over my shoulder, afraid to see him again. When I got home, I took a hot shower hoping to calm down. But as soon as I lay down, the same nightmares tormented me. Distorted images and terrifying sounds haunted me. I woke up in a cold sweat, with the feeling that something was watching me. I couldn't stay at home any longer, so I decided to go back to the cemetery. Maybe if I investigated further what had happened, I could find some rational explanation. Or, who knows, I could find a way to get rid of that creature forever. I decided it was a risk I needed to take. I returned to the cemetery at night, flashlight in hand, determined to face whatever was there. As soon as I arrived, I felt that feeling of being watched again. I looked around but didn't see anything. So, I decided to start exploring the place, looking for clues that could help me understand what had happened. I walked among the tombstones, shining my flashlight into each corner. It was then that I heard a noise coming from one of the crypts. My heart raced, and I approached slowly, afraid of what I might find. As I approached, I saw something that left me paralyzed. The crypt had been forced open, and its interior was completely empty. There was no coffin, just a dark, sinister hole. At that moment, I knew something was very wrong in that cemetery. I left the cemetery quickly, feeling even more scared than before. What could have happened to the body that was in that crypt? And worse, what would that creature have to do with all of this? I couldn't even imagine the possibilities. I decided I needed to find out more about the history of that place. The next day, I went to City Hall and asked for access to the cemetery archives. After much insistence, I managed to obtain some information. Apparently, that cemetery had a dark history. Decades ago, there were a series of suspicious deaths, and some bodies mysteriously disappeared. The investigations never reached any definitive conclusion, and the case was closed. As I read the documents, my stomach turned. Did that creature have any connection with the disappearances of the past? What if she had been hanging around the cemetery all this time? The idea scared me even more. I decided I needed to go back there and investigate further. As soon as the sun set, I returned to the cemetery. This time I was prepared with a more powerful flashlight and a pocket knife. I walked slowly along the paths, looking for any sign of the creature. My eyes scanned the shadows, and my ears picked up every suspicious noise. Then, suddenly, the silence was broken by a scream. Coming from one of the farthest crypts, a terrifying sound echoed, which made me freeze in place. Without thinking twice, I ran towards the sound, my heart beating fast. As I approached, I saw a scene that left me horrified. The creature was there, devouring something that appeared to be a human body. I cannot describe the horror I felt at that moment. That creature, with its twisted limbs and its mouth full of sharp teeth, was delighting in that defenseless body. I couldn't help but scream in terror, which caught the abomination's attention. She slowly turned towards me, her eyes glowing a deep red. His disfigured face contorted into a sadistic smile, and I felt paralyzing fear wash over me. That thing began to approach, its clumsy footsteps echoing through the cemetery. I tried to run, but my legs felt like they had turned to jelly. My mind was screaming at me to move, but my body just wouldn't respond. I ended up tripping and falling on my back, leaving myself at the mercy of that horrible creature. She came closer, her eyes boring into my soul, and I knew this would be the end of me. I closed my eyes, expecting the worst. But to my surprise, nothing happened. I slowly opened my eyes and saw that the creature was gone. I looked around, confused and terrified. Where had she gone? I had no answers, just a deep sense of relief and fear. I quickly got up and ran back to the office, locking the door behind me. I sat on the floor, shaking with terror. I don't know how long I stayed there, cowering, hoping that thing wouldn't come back. Finally, the day dawned, and I was able to leave that damn place. Since then, I haven't been back to the cemetery. I can't stop thinking about that creature, those red eyes and that horrible smile. Is she still there, waiting for me? Or is she hunting me, planning to find me again? This doubt haunts me every day, leaving me in constant fear. I don't know what to do. I just know I never want to see that abomination again. And so we come to the end of this dark story. Or is we really coming? Because now, while you watch this video, be aware of you. These stories are not always on the screen. Sometimes they find a way of us follow to enter our minds. So if you hear a strange sound, if you notice an unexpected shadow or feel that invisible presence by your side, remember, it may just be your imagination, or maybe you have awakened something you shouldn't. If you have the courage, subscribe to the Portal of Horror to explore more dark mysteries. See you next time. Until there, and be careful what may be watching you.